Before we begin, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss new stories. The summer of 1978 was sweltering in Millfield, Pennsylvania. Nixon had stepped down 4 years earlier, and the country was still adjusting to the changes left behind by the 60s. Fleetwood Mac's rumors filled the radio, and teenagers covered their walls with Star Wars posters. On July 23, the temperature hit 93 degrees, hot enough to make the pavement soften. In a two-story house on Sycamore Street, 18-year-old Elizabeth "Lizzie" Blackwell was packing her suitcase. She folded her bell-bottom jeans and blouses while her 16-year-old sister, Abigail, stretched out on the bed. Their room was filled with 70s icons: John Travolta from Saturday Night Fever and Farrah Fawcett in her famous swimsuit. A record player stacked with albums sat in the corner. Lizzie had just graduated high school and was preparing to leave for Penn State in the fall, becoming the first in her family to attend college. She wanted to study education and return to Millfield to teach. With her auburn hair, hazel eyes, and freckles, she was admired for both her looks and her intelligence. Her family couldn't have been prouder. "I wish you weren't leaving," Abigail sighed, twisting her blonde hair as Rod Stewart's "You're in My Heart" played from the radio. "Who's going to protect me from Dad when he drinks?" Lizzie tried to reassure her, saying their mother would handle it, and promised to come home for Thanksgiving. But she didn't sound confident. Nobody in that house knew it yet, but Lizzie would never make it to college. By nightfall, both sisters would be gone. That evening, their mother Mary returned from her shift at Woolworth's to find the house empty. Richard, her husband, was at bowling, but the girls should have been home. The TV was left on, dishes were in the sink, but the house was silent. By 10 p.m., when Richard came home smelling of beer, Mary had already called every friend she could think of. The last sighting was mid-afternoon. Someone saw the sisters walking toward Lake Morrison, a favorite hangout spot for teens. Richard sobered quickly when he heard the news. He jumped into his Ford and drove straight to the lake. There, he found their bikes chained to a tree, towels spread on the shore, and snacks left behind, but no sign of Elizabeth or Abigail. He shouted their names into the night, his voice echoing over the still water. By midnight, Police Chief Daniel Morgan had organized a search. Officers and volunteers scoured the woods and shined flashlights over the lake. A patrol boat swept the water, but nothing turned up. When morning came, there were no answers, only growing fear. News spread quickly. Radio broadcasts carried the story, and soon photos of the girls were taped to shop windows. The local paper ran the headline, "Local Teens Vanish from Lake Morrison." In 1978, there were no Amber Alerts, no cell phones, no social media. The search relied on knocking on doors, making calls, and handing out flyers. The police set up a command post in the high school gym. Volunteers logged calls and tips. A large map tracked search areas, while cigarette smoke and coffee filled the air. Rumors soon surfaced. A gas station worker saw a dark van with out-of-state plates. Teenagers reported hearing screams, though they admitted they had been drinking, and a friend claimed Lizzie had mentioned an older boyfriend from out of town. Officers collected what evidence they could: cigarette butts, tire tracks, fingerprints from soda bottles. But without modern technology, nothing led anywhere. Richard and Mary appeared on local TV, begging for help. Mary, in tears, pleaded for anyone with information to come forward. Despite the FBI sending an agent, the case stalled. Even psychics showed up, offering false hope. By September, when Lizzie should have been starting college, the search effort faded. The gym returned to normal, and the investigation slowed to almost nothing. The years passed, but the sisters' disappearance never left Millfield. The posters in shop windows faded, replaced by new ads. Parents told their children the story as a warning. Mary withdrew from the world, while Richard buried himself in work and alcohol. Each year on the anniversary, Mary held a vigil at the lake, but over time fewer people came. Every birthday, Mary baked cakes and set the table for 5, with Chief Morgan often joining to show the case was still open. But eventually even he passed away, and the files were pushed into storage. By the early 2000s, both Mary and Richard had died, never learning the truth. Their daughters' names were etched onto memorial markers beside their graves. The family home was sold, and the new owners discovered a box of the girls' diaries and photos, which were given to the local historical society. As the decades went by, technology transformed the world. DNA testing, new forensic methods, and cold cases being solved across the country. Then, in 2017, nearly 40 years after the sisters vanished, a severe drought lowered Lake Morrison's water levels. Environmental science students studying the exposed shoreline discovered human remains. Police secured the site, and experts carefully recovered 2 sets of bones. Both belonged to young women, aged 16 to 18, their skulls showing blunt force trauma. Stones had been tied to their bodies with electrical cord. Detective Samantha Riley, a new officer in Millfield, was assigned to the case. She visited the Historical Society, where dusty photos of Elizabeth and Abigail still sat in a display. With dental records, investigators confirmed what many feared: the remains were the Blackwell sisters. But finding them was just the beginning. Detective Riley now had to solve a murder committed decades earlier, with witnesses long grown old and many of the original investigators gone. The task ahead would not be easy. Much of the original evidence had been lost or damaged, but Detective Samantha Riley felt a duty to Elizabeth and Abigail, and to Millfield, which had never healed from their disappearance. She digitized the entire case file, building a timeline of the girls' final day and a database of every name connected to the investigation. She also reached out to the FBI's behavioral unit to help build a profile of the killer. Her first key interview was with Jessica Turner, now Jessica Mitchell, Elizabeth's best friend. Jessica admitted she had long carried guilt, knowing Lizzie had been secretly seeing an older man. She didn't know his name but recalled a silver heart necklace he had given her. Abigail, she said, likely knew as well. Among the items recovered from the lake was that same necklace. Riley sent it, along with clothing and the electrical cord, for modern testing. Results revealed traces of paper mill chemicals and a partial DNA profile preserved on the cord. Classmates pointed Riley to James Harper, who had once asked Elizabeth to prom. Now living in Chicago, Harper admitted his interest but said Elizabeth had told him she was seeing someone else. He remembered her mentioning the man worked at the Millfield paper mill, where her father had been employed. Riley compared this to Elizabeth's diary, which spoke of a secret R, describing gifts, meetings, and a promise of a new life. The last entry, written the day before the girls vanished, referenced plans to meet at the lake. The evidence pointed to a shocking possibility: Richard Blackwell, their father. His employment file showed troubling behavior, including complaints from female workers. In 1977, he had been investigated for advances toward a teenage employee. That woman, now living in Arizona, confirmed he had harassed her and hinted at special relationships with his daughters. An exhumation of Richard's remains provided the breakthrough. DNA matched the partial profile on the cord, and his tools matched cut marks on it. In November 2017, Riley announced the case was closed. Richard Blackwell had killed his daughters and hidden their bodies in Lake Morrison. Millfield was devastated but finally had answers. A memorial service honored the sisters, and reforms followed: Liz's Place Crisis Center, new school programs, and a police cold case unit. Today, their memory endures as both a warning and a symbol of resilience.